Well, let's talk about the 5 things I wish I knew when I was starting my ukulele journey. Now, when you're starting playing, don't worry too much about things. Just worry about playing. That's the priority. But as you're trying to be, an efficient learner in things, hopefully these 5 concepts can help make your journey a little bit, smoother. And speaking of smooth, the first thing we're going to talk about is a saying, which is slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Now, I don't know the origin of this. I've heard it several times from several different people. You might have heard this saying before. But when it comes to learning a musical instrument like the ukulele, this is one of the most important mindsets to have when practicing, especially when you're a new player. So what this means is, well, let's say that you're learning your first song or something, and for me, the first song I ever learned was 5'2", and to play this, all that you do is take your middle finger, place it on the 4th fret of the C string, and your index here on the 3rd fret of the E string. And if you're playing a high G ukulele, it'll sound like mine, but you can do it on low G too. It's totally fine. All that you do to play the song is you go G, C, E, A, and then you move it down 1 fret, so it's at 3 and 2, and you do the same thing. G, C, E, A, and you move it down again. And then you just add that ring finger there for a G7 chord. Right? That's all there is to this intro of the song. It's got this cool little swing feel, right? Now, when I learned this, I got excited because I'm like, oh, this should be played fast, right? And I would immediately, start trying to do this. You hear how bad that sounds, right? And the reason for that is because I would try to speed up my practice prior to having the familiarity that I needed to be able to do that. And this is where that saying slow is smooth and smooth is fast really comes into play. If you practice something at a slow enough speed where the hardest parts of whatever you're working on can be played at the speed you're working on, then you're going to develop the muscle memory of correct relationships between these intervals of notes. So what that means is, let's say that the hardest part of learning this for me is moving down 1 fret, which again, not very hard, but Matt 20 years ago learning this struggled. And let's say that that's the hardest part. Well, I want to practice the song at a speed where this can be played in time. So that might be something like this. If I speed up the parts outside of that, you hear how now things sort of fall apart. By playing it slowly and getting that consistent movement, I'm playing it more smoothly, right? Slow is smooth. Now the next part of this is smooth is fast. And really what this means is that as you play this consistently, you are sort of writing muscle memory in the correct manner so that as you speed it up little by little, the hope is that those difficult parts that you're slowing the whole thing down for are the ones that you're working on getting a little bit faster each time. So if you ever play a song, and even if you're not a beginner, this is an important concept, right? But if you're ever playing a song and there's that one part that slows it all down and makes it all get destroyed, so to speak, then slow down the whole song to where you can play that part consistently. And then from there, gradually increase the speed of that section within it. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So critical. Don't worry about playing things fast, right off the get-go. Really develop that muscle memory and gradually increase the speed as you're doing it, right? Zill actually just messaged in the comments saying some things are hard to play slow. I'm struggling to slow down your new one with all the chunks. Yeah, and so you're absolutely correct. Like chunking is a technique on the uke that in the tutorials I teach it, I even mention you can't really do it slow, right? And so it's that fine balancing act of finding a way that you can do it consistently. And so that's really the ultimate goal is play it at the slowest speed you can while getting that consistency. So if it's a technique that requires a little bit of speed, try to do it as slow as you can while still maintaining that consistency. And it will come much more easily than if you try to go too fast right away. So slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Really, probably the most important concept from just an efficiency of learning standpoint. If you do that, if you play things slowly and gradually increase the speed as you play it smoothly, you're going to fly with your progress. The second note is that there's more than one right way. And what I mean by this is, well, people tend to latch onto usually the first thing they hear about something. So my reference point here is when I started learning the ukulele, I learned from some guitar resources. And in the world of the guitar, you're not supposed to ever have your thumb kind of come up and over the fretboard like this. On the ukulele, it might be different, but on, the guitar, they tell you don't do this. Keep the thumb squared behind. So relatively early on in my playing, I did a lot of this, and I thought, oh, that's bad. I got to do this. I have to be squared behind and do this exactly this way. And that's because guitarists that are teaching the ukulele will teach the ukulele a lot like a guitar in a lot of times, right? And so what I found was, God, some chords and some progressions are really hard to do with my thumb squared back here, but this is the right way to do it. Well, this is where the second point comes in, which is there's usually more than one right way to play, right? And there's more than one right way to do a technique and to play, these different concepts. And so I was actually watching a video of Jake Shimabukuro playing and trying to learn some of his things. And one day I kind of realized, oh, I'm going to look at his hand position, and his thumb was way out here. Way out here. And I was like, oh, Jake's wrong. Wait a minute. Jake's not wrong. I was wrong in thinking that there's only one way to play because I was told at one point to keep the thumb squared behind. It's really, really critical to be a little bit open-minded as you're learning different techniques. You don't want to question the source that you're, getting it from if you know it's good. If you're learning from a reputable teacher and they say do it this way, still do it that way. But just don't become dogmatic in the views thinking that's the only way you're allowed to play that technique. People's hands are different shapes and sizes, and that can oftentimes mean that a technique works better for one person than another. For instance, I have very, very large hands. I've got huge hands. And so for me, it's actually easier to kind of cup the ukulele in this way. And you'll see how far my thumb comes over. Someone with smaller hands, their thumb might only come over this much, right? And we're both right in how we're playing it as long as we're, still maintaining good technique and posture, so to speak, right? This is also true for chord progressions and songs and things like that. You might be thinking, oh, I want to learn this new song. Found the chords online. Okay, it says C. And then you think it's a C. That's how I should play it, right? And then your friend is playing the same song and they play a C7. It's like, well, no, it's a C. My thing says a C. Well, maybe both of them can work. And it's really important to kind of remain, open-minded with that, knowing that there's more than one right way more often than not. Now, the stipulation here is there's often, misinformation that's spread, especially on the internet. So you don't always want to think, oh, that random thing I found on this guitar website said play a C7 chord, but mine says play a C major 7. I guess they're both right. Well, they might not both be right. And it's important to try to find, resources that you could trust. And if you could trust the resource and one resource here tells you one way and another resource here tells you another way, probably both right as long as they're good. So number 2 is there's more than one right way to do this, right? To do most techniques, to do most things. And when you're learning something, don't think this is the only way and I have to just do it this way. One last note with that is sometimes we can use this second reason as an excuse for something being too difficult. And that's not what we want to do. Meaning, if you start working on something, it's like, oh, this is really hard. Oh, there must be another way to do it. Well, you want to make sure that you're getting comfortable with whatever correct way you're currently working on and understand that there's more than one right way might mean there's another more efficient way for that particular instance. But learning the multitude of ways is going to help better you as a player immensely. So don't use this as an excuse of, oh, this is too hard, because then you might not learn anything as you're looking for that one way that's easy enough, because that might not exist. But anyways, I'm kind of rambling on it. Number 2, there's more than one right way. So number 3, I really, really like, is just go for it. This is, I think, the most important of these 5 concepts when it comes to just enjoying yourself. So for a little bit of backstory with this, I picked up my first ukulele about, 20 years ago. And I learned 3 or 4 chords with the 5'2" progression, and that was about it. That was my ukulele playing, right? I enjoyed what I did with it, and that was all I did for a few years, really. I got my first ukulele, learned a couple songs, learned the fun song from SpongeBob SquarePants, and that was about it, right? And then one day I saw a video of Jake Shimabukuro playing, which a lot of people probably do, and it's like, oh, you could do a lot with this thing. And I decided, oh, I want to start playing the ukulele, more. And I, got another ukulele, a nicer one, started playing more. And I remember watching Jake's stuff, thinking that's what I want to do someday. I want to play these like instrumental, crazy, fast, whatever, right? And a couple of years went by of me just kind of gradually progressing, where I would only do things that I felt like I should be doing, right? It's like I took music lessons growing up for piano and saxophone, and you're supposed to work through the Hal Leonard book or whatever. And I had a Hal Leonard ukulele book that I was working through, and I felt like this is the journey I'm supposed to be on. And then one day, I found a tab for one of Jake's songs, and I just said, "Screw it! I'm going to try to learn this. Why not?" I was not a good enough player to be playing this tab, but I really wanted to learn it, and I knew that I wanted to learn it, and I knew it would be challenging, and I said, "Let's just go for it." And it took a few months, and the end product wasn't great, but I did it. I learned that song. It was actually his song Dragon, which involves all this like tapping. I didn't know how to tap, but ooh, I just messed that up. Let's try that again. Sounds something like this, right? And so I spent hundreds of hours on this song, but I was making a little bit of progress here and there. It was slow. It was so slow, but I was loving it. And by an external measure, it's like, why are you doing this? You're not making much progress. But within my internal measure, it was, I'm having a lot of fun trying to do this song that I think I can do. And after I learned that song, everything started to click for me in terms of what I enjoyed to play, how to play those things that I wanted to. And I went on this rampage of learning, basically, where I learned like literally like 15 different Jake Shimabukuro songs, like one after another after another. I just became consumed by it. And it didn't go super quickly, right? It still was a slog and a grind, but man, was it ever fun. Now, that's not the normal, where you jump in. And if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be sitting here today working with you guys, right? So the message here is if there's something that you want to play and you feel like you're not good enough to try it yet, just go for it. Because what's the worst thing that can happen, right? You fail, and that's okay. In fact, that kind of perfectly segues into number 4. And number 4 is that failure is a necessity. Nobody gets good at this thing or anything without failing a lot. So number 3 was just go for it, right? Find something that might seem unachievable and just go for it. It leads directly into this 4th thing, which is failure is an absolute necessity. Failure is required for growth. So if you're scared to fail, get over it. Get over it. We all fail with this. Every single person. In fact, the players that are sitting and playing for you, performing for you, or teaching or whatever else, the biggest difference between us and you is we've failed more than you have. That's literally the biggest difference. And that might just be because we've been playing longer, probably. But the reality is that failure is what allows you to grow, because you learn what doesn't work by trying different things. And I cannot stress enough how critical failure is to development. It's so, so important. Now, we get pretty self-conscious with failure, right? We don't like showing our failure to others. But the reality is that everybody does it, and it's okay to do so. I've picked up skateboarding again recently, which you might have heard me mention if you watched some of the other videos. And I think so I did it as a kid and had to stop because of some knee surgeries. Now everything hurts because I'm old, so I just go for it. But I digress. I picked up the ukulele because I couldn't skateboard anymore. That was the reason I picked up this instrument. And I think one of the reasons why I was able to actually get good at the ukulele was because of my skateboarding. Because one of the things about skateboarding that makes it different than any other sport or hobby or whatever else is 99.9% of skateboarding is falling and failing. Like when we're trying to learn a new trick, for every make we have, there's probably over 100 fails. And it's not that, we only hit it 1 in 100 times. It's that we probably tried it 10,000 times before we finally landed it. And so that failure mindset is a big part of skateboarding. And I brought it with me to the ukulele. And so when I was learning like those Jake songs, I'd fail all the time. But to me, it was just like trying a trick on the skateboard. You just get back up and you try again. And you keep going and going and going until it starts to work. And let me tell you, the more you fail at something, the more satisfying it is when you don't fail. When things come easily, they get boring. When things take practice and time and energy, blood, sweat, and tears, and you finally get it, it's the best feeling in the world. Truly, the best feeling like I can think of was like landing my first kickflip, or the first time I played While My Guitar Gently Weeps all the way through, right? It's the same type of feeling, and they're both built on a foundation of failure. So failure is absolutely a necessity and just so critical. Zill types, "Oh, I'm good at failing. Finally, something I'm good at." That's actually great. It's actually hard to be really good at failing, and I know that sounds funny, but the mindset, to fail and then to kind of keep an excitement to try again is such a important step to development and everything else. And to be completely honest, that's why I don't like performing. I'm not a big performer. I much prefer to teach. And the reason is because teaching is about failure, right? Teaching is about learning how to overcome these failures. And performing is about the failures all already being overcome. And I don't like that. I mean, look, I just played a little bit of Dragon and I messed it up right away, right? Wouldn't make for a good performance, but as far as a teaching moment, it can be nice. So I love failure. My favorite word in the English language is oops. That's why, my dad's a doctor, my wife's a nurse, grandfather was a periodontist. Like, there's medicine all over the family. People oftentimes ask why weren't you a doctor or whatever, and I say I like the word oops too much. Can't use that as a doctor. And so say oops more, make more oopses, and don't feel self-conscious about it, because that's how you get to the point you want to go. If you're too scared to fail to try, you'll never be able to succeed, right? So that's number 4. Failure is a necessity. Let's go back through this list real quick, right? So we've got number 1, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So what this means is that you want to practice whatever you're working on at a speed slow enough that all of the parts are consistent and comfortable. Don't have that one part that slows you down. Slow everything else down to that one part and then gradually build up that speed. Because if you can play it smoothly, slowly, you'll be able to play it smoothly, fast. Number 2 was there's more than one right way. So just because one teacher tells you one way to do something doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only way for that technique to be done. So look around, try different things, keep an open mind when you're learning, and know that sometimes there's more than one way to play something correctly. Number 3, my favorite, just go for it. Even if you think that song's too difficult for you, just go for it. Why not? You've got nothing to lose and everything to gain, because you might end up just falling in love with your practice. And the worst case that happens with number 3 is that you fail, and that's good, because number 4 is that failure is required for growth. Without failure, we cannot progress. And so the more you fail, the more you progress. And it's just so critical to have that sort of skateboarder's mindset of, I'm going to fall in this trick a lot of times, but eventually I'm going to get it. And number 5 is it's not a race. It's not a race. This is really problematic these days in the Instagram, Facebook, Twitter world. Everybody is comparing themselves and their growth to other people. They always think that they're not good enough and that they're not doing enough to be able to practice and get these sounds. And that's just awful. That's such a bad, toxic mindset, because the only person that you should be doing, judging with is yourself. Nothing else. Nothing else matters but you when you're learning an ukulele. And what you should be judging yourself on is not your progress as much as your enjoyment with the instrument. And so when I say it's not a race, what this means is you might pick up the ukulele at the same time as a friend, and that friend just progresses so much faster than you do. And it's so frustrating because they just do it and it works. For me, this actually happened when I was, so growing up, I've got 2 younger brothers, which I might have mentioned before in other videos. And they're both much, much more talented musicians than I am. When I say talented musicians, what I actually mean is they have this sort of, they're born with it ability, right? So I might have said this story before, but when myself and my brothers were all babies at our respective times, my mom would sing to us and we'd sing along with it. And when she'd sing to me, I'm the oldest, I'd belt it out. And if she went out of my range, I'd be out of tune. Below the range, I'd be out of tune. And that's, just what happened. But when both of my brothers were babies at their respective times, when my mom would go out of their range, they would jump the octave either up or down to stay at the same pitch that she was at. You can't teach that. That's literally innate ability, right? And so when we were growing up, they always were better with music than I was just sort of naturally. And I picked up the ukulele and I was playing it and everything else. And I still remember many times where the middle brother, Jake, would pick up a ukulele and he didn't play ukulele and he'd start messing around with it. And all of a sudden he was better than I was. I'd spent hours working on this and all of a sudden he picks it up and he's just making music because he just kind of feels it. He's got perfect pitch. He's just one of those guys, right? And so I was so frustrated with that because it was like, well, why is he progressing so much more quickly than I am so rapidly? Like what's going on here? And what helped me was realizing that, well, I'm having more fun now than I was before. I'm enjoying myself more every day I pick up this instrument. And that's the measure that I need to look at, not in terms of how quickly I progress, but rather in terms of how much I enjoy myself as I'm progressing. Because if we make it into a race, I'm not going to come in first, and nobody's going to come in first, except for the one person that comes in first. And if you're that one person, congratulations. But I don't think anyone watching this video is going to be that one person. And so just enjoy yourself and the process of learning, because the "it's not a race" moniker doesn't just apply to how quickly you progress, but a race implies a finish line, right? You have a beginning and an end with a race. And the truth is, with the ukulele and music instruments and really pretty much all hobbies, there's no finish line. There's no end to this. And that might be a little bit of a bombshell for some people that think, oh, I want to get to this point and then I'll be happy. Well, that point doesn't exist. Having goals and things to strive for certainly does. But when you hit this marker, you're going to be shooting for this marker now. And as you get closer to this marker, the marker moves with your growth. So just know that there's no end to this journey. It is truly a limitless journey. And the more you enjoy the process of moving along the journey, the better a player I think you'll be, because it means that you're enjoying yourself more instead of just miserable because Jane on Instagram can play that chord and you just can't quite get it right. It's okay. It's not a race. Just, judge yourself in terms of how much enjoyment you're gaining from what you're practicing with. And that is the most important thing to me. So the 5 things, we did a little bit of recap, but just to say them all again: slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Practice slow, gradually increase speed. There's more than one right way. Most techniques have an alternative that also works. So don't get dogmatic in your views if that's the only way to play it. Just go for it. Who cares if that song seems too hard? Go for it. Worst thing you can do is fail, and failure is a necessity for growth. So make sure you do that. And number 5 is it's not a race. There's no finish line. Everybody's at different stages of their journey. Judge yourself on the enjoyment you're gaining, not in terms of how quickly you're progressing your techniques, because it doesn't really matter. It's not a race and there's no end to the journey. So just have fun as you're going on it. So I'm going to open up to some questions if anybody has any on these concepts. I saw some things in the chat that I'm going to start reading, but let's go ahead and talk a little bit about some of this stuff. Lots of comments. Awesome. Good morning, P. Good morning, Zill and Connie and Beth. Awesome. All right. So Zill says some things are hard to play slow. Oh, yeah. We mentioned that with the struggling with the chunks. Yeah. And so sometimes when you're practicing slowly, you can't play it that slow. So you want to find that speed in which you can play it the slowest while still maintaining the song. And that's hard too. But it'll come with that practice. Beth says playing slowly is important no matter what level we're at. Absolutely. I do a lot of song tutorials here on Rock Class 101 and on my website as well. And every time I start struggling with one of them for a performance, I'll get really discouraged because I'll spend 20 minutes or something, and I just try to go faster and faster and faster. And I take a step back and I'm like, if I were a student of mine right now, I'd be really mad because I'm not doing the right things. And Sure enough, slow it down, practice it really slowly, gradually increase the speed, and I've got it. So it's true. Playing slowly is important no matter what level you're at. Uh, P Cash says, I sometimes use different fingering than the lesson. I feel like I'm using bad form, even though it's easier for me to reach the strings. So that's a little bit of a dicey thing because sometimes it can be correct, sometimes it isn't. I think that that's where it's really important to, talk to a teacher or something else who can kind of analyze whether it's correct or not. My recommendation is always learn the fingering that's shown in the lesson, get that comfortable, and then make the decision to do something else. That way you don't form bad habits, you form the habits that the song's teaching, and then you can form additional habits and decide between those two, right? The problem is sometimes a song lesson will have really bad fingerings on it just because of the nature of online lessons. On Rock Class 101, they're going to be really consistent with making sure that they're good fingerings, but just kind of keep that in mind. Zill says, I was liking failure as an excuse. Yep, me too. Or something being different as an excuse, excuse me. Yeah, you want to learn things the way they're shown and then know that you can learn them other ways too. Beth says, sometimes it's worth working on the difficult fingering. Sometimes it's good to find something that's efficient. One of Matt's favorite terms. I love the word efficient. Efficient is just another word for, justified laziness, right? Like if you're really efficient with things, you work less hard. I love that. And so I love efficient fingerings to make sure that I'm playing things correctly. But yeah, sometimes it's worth doing something harder just to develop that skill. And I've got a few different exercises I've done and I do with my private students where we purposely do things all off because it teaches a different concept, right? So learning things different ways is absolutely good and important. Pcash says, I'm trying the same with Georgia on my mind, but I know it's still out of reach, but I got the intro down. Go for it. Why not? What do you got to lose? I love doing stuff that's more difficult than, should be working on. I think that really good progress is made when you're doing things that you love. And if you're doing something that's really difficult and that you really love, your progress will show that. Zill says, next lesson on tapping. Maybe I got to practice my tapping as we saw earlier today. I haven't done that in a while. Beth says, I don't seem to think in terms of failure. It's more that I can't do it yet. The next time will be better. Yeah, absolutely. I think that people struggle with that term failure and with like the feeling of, not feeling very insecure about failing and things like that. I think that's one thing I mentioned the skateboarding before that I really like is, in skateboarding you fall and it's just a fact. And so with the ukulele, I kind of would think of my flubs as falls that hurt a lot less than they did on a skateboard. So however you can think about it and internalize it to make it a positive is going to be best. Connie says, nice recap. I'm joining in late. Hi everyone. Hello Connie, glad you were able to come. Let's see. Zill says we compare our failure as we're learning with their polished recording. Yeah, so that's really hard, and I'm glad you brought that up. As you watch a video of somebody playing something, you're like, I want to learn that, and then you see yourself fail a million times before you get it. And I think that so I'm gonna make a little bit more of a skateboarding reference, and maybe we need more of this in the ukulele world. Maybe there's a little bit of an epiphany here. What that is on skate videos of people's parts, like when they make a video part. It's very rarely all makes. In fact, a skate video part was really popular on a really hard trick when they're going off some big ledge or stair set or whatever. They show a couple falls before the make. And sometimes you don't want to see it because, but they show that, and I think that it makes it more impressive, right? Because it doesn't just show, oh my God, look at, he just, grinded down that 27 stair handrail, right? But it's like, oh my God, he ate it a couple times before. It makes it more impressive, right? Because it shows the adversity that they're overcoming within whatever they're working on. And so maybe a better performance video for a song tutorial shows mistakes in it and shows the fixing. Just because the truth is we all make them, right? Whenever I make a video of a performance of a song, very rarely is it like first take on the recording. And it's never just, I've never played this song before, play, go. No, there's the failures that exist prior to it, right? It's not just some first take, first try nonsense. You only see the end of it. So maybe there's something that needs to happen with tutorial videos where there's more messing up during the performances, just like a skate video showing the bail before the make. Uh, Pcash says, how do you unlearn bad technique? I played slow and burned into muscle memory. So I love this. You do it the same way you wrote the original muscle memory. So you have to work on the same stuff slow and work on trying to rewrite it. And I'll tell you right now, it takes twice as long as if you learned it correctly the first time. That sounds bad, right? That sounds like a terrible thing, because now it's like, wait, what? So I've spent all this time working on it, but I have to I have to undo it, and it takes twice as long to undo it. Is it what? That's crazy. But doing that process helps your mind so much, because the really great players are able to essentially rewire their thought processes, create new neuron pathways more quickly than people that don't have the experience. So even though it's a very inefficient from a timing standpoint to learn a new technique, it's very important to development. So learning something wrong, don't stress over it. We all do it. Now the process of learning it right, really hard and really worthwhile. So go through the same process you did learning it the first time. No, it's going to take about twice as long, and you'll be that much better for it later. Because when you can do that quickly, you can learn new techniques more quickly too, right? Because you're able to rewire the brain. Connie says, I started the intro to Come As You Are, and it's hard playing slow when you know the song and want to play at the speed you're used to hearing it at. Yeah, totally. Perspective is kind of a pain with this stuff, because we have the perspective of the song, how it should sound, but we have to play it slow, and it's all tricky, right? And so with the intro to that, play it smooth and slow, but don't worry about doing the whole song, right? Just do the intro, get that comfortable, and then you can play that full speed before moving to the next thing. That's, I think, a common problem people have, is they think that they have to play the whole song at once. No, just play a piece of it. Work on that piece slow and smooth, work that into smooth and fast, and then work on the next section after that. I think that can help. Zill says, bonus round, have you got a sixth tip? A sixth tip? Yeah, let's go with the sixth tip of, let's say, theory is just a guideline. So this is a concept of when we're looking at chord progressions and we're looking at melodies and everything else online. When you see a chord progression listed, that's more of a guideline than anything else. It's okay to substitute some chords and play different things. Don't think of everything as this is the only way I should play it. It's more of a guideline and recommendation, and try out some different stuff. You might be wrong, but who cares? It's fun to learn that process, to try to hear what can sound right. And so kind of trusting your instincts with that can be kind of fun. I guess that's kind of like the there's more than one right way, but you put me on the spot. That's the sixth one I got. Pat also says, I think we must be masochists since we love the effort of learning new stuff. There's something very satisfying about learning something new. Thanks for the tips. Yeah, absolutely. It's with no obstacles to overcome, with no challenge, it's not satisfying. It's so much more satisfying when there's a challenge. And this is the skateboarding thing, going back to it just one more time. Skateboarding's really hard, and I'm not very good at it, but I love doing it. And I can do a kickflip, which is where you pop the board and you flip it like this and catch it and land. And I've spent probably, oh God, I don't know. I've spent a lot of hours in the last few years working on it, and it's still not perfect and whatever else. But doing it is so satisfying because, even though I've been landing kickflips for a couple of years, I've still failed at them much more than I've landed them. So it's still satisfying landing one, because I think about all those failures that existed when I was a kid and everything else. So yeah, it's a lot of fun to overcome a challenge. And the more difficult that challenge is to overcome, the more fun you'll have overcoming it. So Still says, thank you for rolling with it. I did put you on the spot. Yeah, no worries. I tried to, with these 5 points, we could rephrase them and reframe them in so many different ways. It's more like 10 different things, just, kind of distilled down to the 5. And so, I got a better sixth one. Here's the best sixth one. Make sure you're playing a ukulele that's better than you want to be. And what that means is people oftentimes think that they don't deserve to get a nice ukulele until they're good enough to play it. That is a load of BS. It is so critical that the worst thing about your playing is you. And what I mean by that is hook yourself up with a ukulele that's really nice, that you can grow into, that will never be the problem. You know, try to hook yourself up with tutorials and things of content that is of high quality so that when you're working on it and you make a mistake, you know the reason you're making a mistake isn't the nice ukulele or the instruction or whatever else. It's you. And if you're playing a really cheap, crummy ukulele and something doesn't sound right, there's a chance that the ukulele is the reason that that problem exists, not you. And that's really frustrating as a learner. So surround yourself with the best stuff you can do. Make it so that when you're learning, the worst thing is yourself, so that you always know the problem is from you, not from the equipment or resources that you're using. So get a nice uke. Kanalea, they make really, really nice ukuleles. I love mine, and I still don't feel like I'm better than it. I don't think I'll ever get better with it. So I'm just feeding everyone's ukulele acquisition syndrome right there. But as Sil said, I have to buy another uke. Ukulele acquisition syndrome is real. I will say one last thing on the ukulele acquisition syndrome. You know, if you have 16 $400 ukuleles, you're just going to keep buying more ukes because they're not that nice. I'm not saying a $400 ukulele isn't great. It can be really fantastic, but you will outgrow a $400 ukulele. Absolutely. And so investing in a $1,400 ukulele can oftentimes really, really help. And, you know, if you're going to buy 5 ukes anyways, just buy one really nice one and your UAS will go away when you got a nice uke, or at least be diminished a little bit. So cool. P Cash says, that's funny. I want to get a much nicer tone. I hear the tones from you and rock class teachers and mine sounds so much worse. Great tip. I'm going shopping. Yeah. And it won't fix it all. You know, you'll get a nice uke and you might be like, well, why does it sound great? Well, because the worst part is still you, which is great, you know, and you'll make it sound better and better as you learn. But the uke will never be the fault. Beth says, you are so right. My playing has been so much more fun and instructive since I got my Otasans. Good ukes. My first nice uke was an Otosan, as you might know, but very cool. Well, this has been a very fun live lesson. Sorry for more talking than uking, but sometimes that's what happens with this sort of stuff. I hope that you got something out of it. Again, just to recap our 5 concepts: slow is smooth, smooth is fast. There's more than one right way. Just go for it. Failure is required for growth, and it's not a race, right? Just kind of think of these things as you're practicing, and hopefully that'll help your ukulele journey as you go along, because it is limitless. There's no end to this journey that we're all on. So we're just at different levels of it. And, you know, I've got a lot of private students. My main thing that I do is teach one-on-one lessons. People often ask, you know, who's your best student? And for me, when I think of my best students, I think of the ones that are having the most fun. They might not have all the techniques and all the skills that some of the others do, but some of mine have a lot more technique, and they're just, you know, they're kind of always mad at themselves for not being better than they, you know, should be at that time. And I love the ones that are just like, God, I'm having fun. I'm learning stuff. This is great. Those are the best students. So I love all my students though, but I digress. Thank you guys so much. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. If you're watching this as a recording, feel free to leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys next time for the next live lesson, which we do every second Saturday of the month. Yeah, hope you enjoy. Take it easy. Talk to you soon. Oh, and happy Mother's Day to all the moms.